services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh has done it again, serving up yet another new and improved sub, the Cali Fresh Steak, loaded with tender, flavorful marinated steak on top of thick-cut hickory smoked bacon, smashed avocado, and fresh mozzarella. The Cali Fresh Steak is protein-packed to leave you feeling full and satisfied. Cali Fresh Steak is made on our freshly baked hearty multigrain bread layered with fresh veggies of your choice. Subway, eat fresh.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That rule hasn't changed over the last 3 days, Jose.
Not even on a 3-day weekend.
Even though I wasn't here to bark it over the microphone for our international radio listening audience, it's still the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. And so long as I have anything to say about it, it will remain there forever. Let's see what we got here in Zemi-Ikotni today. It is Christmas after all. Here's the daily news. Let's all really find something to feel good about here today, folks. Our view: holidays remind us to protect and grow together as we live through the pandemic. Yeah, the holidays brighten our lives as we celebrate with family and friends. It can be a stressful time, which we sometimes hide behind the beautiful and bright decorations, seasonal music, and festivities, and old men sitting in the corner saying, "Bah, humbug." This year, we also had to protect ourselves, not just from mental and emotional stress, but from the threat to our physical health from eating too much food on Christmas Day. We got our vaccines and boosters just to feel safe, being close to our loved ones, some of whom we hadn't seen in months. The moment Christmas hit, we felt the warmth and familiarity of our loved ones. You know, on the day before Christmas, on December 24th, the Daily News ran the 1886 editorial that starts out, "Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus." And it's great. I really enjoy reading it every year. But that was enough. We don't need to come back to that sort of sentiment today. You know, what is it, 2 days after Christmas? Christmas is over. Let's move on. Let's go back to writing real editorials. Now, on the same editorial page today as the one that I just tossed in the shucks can, I found this, an editorial by a gentleman named Byron York. Demolishing Democratic Delusions. Senator Joe Manchin's announcement that he will not support the Democrats' giant spending bill should not have been a surprise to anyone who's been watching Manchin for the last few months. I think there's a new word added to the English language, machinations.
That's a good one.
Yet many Democrats, especially in the White House and in the progressive wing of the House of Representatives, appeared shocked when Manchin told Fox News' Brett Baier, quote, "I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't." They apparently believe Manchin would ultimately come around and do so before Christmas. And he doesn't even read Daily News editorials. When he did not, they were stunned. Their reaction is the latest manifestation of a mass delusion affecting Democrats in Washington. For nearly a year, since January 20, 2021, they have believed they could act a nation-changing agenda, shades of FDR and LBJ, without having won a majority of seats in the U.S. Senate. Somehow, all on their own and without any Republican support, they could bring landmark legislation to a 50-50 tie vote in the Senate and then have Vice President Kamala Harris break the tie in the Democrats' favor. They seem to forget that Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Lyndon Johnson had huge majorities in both House and Senate when they enacted sprawling New Deal and Great Society legislation, respectively. Now, I remember the Great Society like it was yesterday. I was around for the end of the New Deal, but I don't remember much of it.
You had a pot and a chicken in it?
Well, I was little, so I just had the pot. They seem to forget that Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Lyndon, as you were, even for the structure of their massive spending bill, which they called Build Back Better, was shaped by their lack of a Senate majority. Democrat leaders knew how hard it would be to get anything through the Senate, to keep all 50 of their own senators together, so they packed nearly the entire Biden agenda of social spending and climate projects into one big bill. Everyone on their side would have to vote for it, wouldn't they? No, they wouldn't. Manchin, a Democrat from a state Donald Trump carried by 40 points last year, voted for earlier massive spending measures but drew the line at Build Back Better. He gave lots of reasons. He's worried about inflation. He's worried about the accounting gimmicks. He's worried that the bill distracts resources from the fight against COVID. But the bottom line was no. Perhaps the real news was that Democrats were shocked and angry, and the White House quickly released a long statement approved by President Biden himself, accusing Manchin of lying during negotiations over the bill. That's a good way to bring him around. This really pissed him off. That'll do it.
That's their mode of operation.
Manchin's announcement on Fox News, the statement said, represented a sudden and inexplicable reversal in his position and a breach of his commitments to the president and the senator's colleagues in the House and Senate. Others were more direct. Let's be clear. Manchin's excuse is bull blank, tweeted Democrat Representative Ilhan Omar.
Did her brother/husband approve of that message?
I wonder if she took it back to the squad to get their concurrence. Still, others use Manchin's position to advocate blowing up the entire structure of the sentence, of the Senate. What kind of healthy democracy is structured in a way that can allow one man elected by 290,000 voters in one of the least populous states to thwart the agenda of his party and the president who was elected with 81 million votes, tweeted Sharon Eiffel. That's probably what her head is made of. Sharon Eiffel, head of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, We need structural change. Eiffel neglected to note that Manchin had no special power by himself. He joined 50 Republican senators who do not support the bill to create a 51 majority against the legislation. But this, what Eiffel said, is classic Democrat gaslighting. We're going to let one man stand in the way of this, all by himself.
They've been doing it for 5 years now.
Yeah. Obviously, Democrats were disappointed. That's understandable. But what lay behind the intensity of their reaction? The American Enterprise Institute's James Pathokokos had a good point when he suggested the answer in the realm of psychology, not politics. The whole fight over the Biden agenda seems like a behavioral study case, behavioral psychology study, case study. Pathokos tweeted, progressive Democrats anchored their expectations when they thought the 2020 elections were going to be a big win. That's when they set up their expectations. And when they weren't, struggled to alter expectations. The reality, to answer the question, why do Democrats believe they can pass controversial, far-reaching, consequential legislation without holding a majority of seats in the Senate, might be the Democrats have not accepted the fact that they do not hold a majority of the seats in the Senate. They have never adjusted their agenda to their actual situation. But now, reality is doing it for them. And the same guy with the unpronounceable name said, progressive Democrats anchored their expectations when they thought the 2020 election were going to be a big win. And when they weren't, struggled to alter their expectations. Yeah, so I'm glad the Daily News ran it, and it's a surprise, frankly.
It's a self-reflection.
Yeah, right.
You know, this same thing happened in 2016 when Trump had beat Hillary Clinton and the Democrats lost it. And it's not just a small fringe of people, because every group has that small fringe of nuts that freak out when they lose. It was almost like this whole wave of this psychological issue that overtook the nation, the media, even the politicians, that they just couldn't believe it, and they just rammed Trump left and right, left and right.
Because they were supposed to win. Hillary was supposed to, it was her turn.
It was her turn, right.
Yeah. Okay, Post did pretty well today. Gambling device case gives leaders another chance to show where they stand. Since 2008, a legal question over whether the government could or should license some 1,200 electronic gaming devices has been weighed. By the time the Supreme Court of Guam issued an opinion on the matter last week, multiple governors and their administrations, directors and staff, attorneys general in their offices, and lawmakers have weighed in, sometimes offering contradictory positions, issuing orders that reverse the course set by predecessors. This back and forth nature of the case was set from the very beginning. What, they don't understand the English? What is this, from the very beginning?
I don't know. You want me to translate?
Go ahead.
It's from the get-go.
Yeah, okay. When the Department of Revenue and Taxation initially agreed with the Office of the Attorney General that these devices, which include popular gambling machine brands such as Liberty and Uncle Sam, were illegal under Guam law and should not be licensed. Days later, in June 2008, then acting Governor Mike Cruz issued a directive for the devices to be licensed by DRT, claiming a legal memo from the Attorney General was not sufficient to deny businesses, quote, the means to earn a living. You got to have more than that. Cruz, who continues to be a prominent medical professional during the current pandemic, at the time said the legal argument should be proven in court or adjudicated administratively. It's taken more than a decade to get the finality sought by the island's temporary chief executive. Now, of course, there's an old saying here amongst lawyers that a court cannot not decide. If a matter comes before it and there's no written decision, then the court has decided in favor of the status quo. So in this particular case, 2008 up until last year, 2020, 12 years of clinking cash registers. So the gambling interests won a tremendous victory when Acting Governor Mike Cruz said, it's got to go to court. 12 years of the full dinner pail. It's taken more than a decade to get the finality sought by the island's temporary chief executive. In the meantime, courts ruled in favor of both businesses fighting the ban and the government's effort to prove they are not allowed under law, drawing out the fight with appeals, writs, and judicial stays. Complicating the matter further, in the midst of an unresolved challenge were legislative efforts directed gambling proceeds, even from the disputed machines, into the Guam Memorial Hospital, public schools, and village recreation facilities. Spurred by the senator's authorization and Adeloop's interpretation that another statute adopted rules to license them, then Governor Calvo began allowing machines to operate in 2013. In their newest and possibly final opinion on the case, Supreme Court justices agreed with the OAG's argument that those rules were not publicly disclosed or discussed as required by local law and were thus never properly promulgated and were ultimately not adopted through statute. At the risk of oversimplifying an extremely complicated situation, the winning argument was that with no rules to use to license machines, they cannot operate lawfully on the island. Moving forward, we hope to see consistency with our current crop of senators, Governor Lilian Guerrero and her administration. As noted correctly by the courts and OAG, lawmakers have the power to, quote, cure any mistakes made in the licensure process for these 1,200 machines. That means while inaction could continue to prevent any of them from operating in game rooms, senators can choose to authorize their use through legislation. During the course of this case, the legislature has often offered different takes on local gambling. Automatic bingo dabbers or card minders, cockfighting, and Liberation Day casinos are just some of the examples of gambling that senators have supported through passed or introduced bills. Lawmakers also consider whether to allow game rooms to operate as essential businesses during some of the more restrictive parts of the Wuhan virus public emergency. If any of our elected senators are thinking of reversing course by allowing those 1,200 electronic gaming machines to be played on Guam, they should speak up now, well before next year's election. The administration likewise should disclose the actions the public should expect from the governor and her cabinet when it comes to enforcing the judicial ban. Adeloop already has announced it has not renewed any of the machines' licenses for about a year now. Officials should now share in no uncertain terms when these licenses expired so the public and law enforcement can know plainly whether any gambling was done using unlicensed machines while the case was active. We also should know when and how these now illegal machines will be handled moving forward. The law spells out a process of forfeiture and seizure, and the penalties for anyone who imports and operates electronic gambling devices not expressly allowed in statute. Heading into an election cycle, voters shouldn't have to place bets on where elected officials stand on this issue, if only because rolling the dice on gambling policies could mean another decade of legal confusion ahead of us. Yeah, all of the elements of a good editorial. An important issue, a good layout of the facts, a criticism where it was due and a call to action. So that blue pencil doesn't work very well. Given so many blue, I'm so generous here. I've given so many blue stars that my blue pencil's out of ink. Okay, here we go. Daily Post. Congratulations, Daily Post. That takes the Post up to 259 blue stars.
Don't be deceived. They've been on a dry spell, though.
Yeah, they have. They seem to be getting their mojo back, as it were. Okay, let's take a look at the card, and then Jose's probably going to want to take a break, right? Yeah. Okay, I've got, let's see, I've got, start out with Paul Zerzan and systemic racism. And I thought it's another way of looking at this. By the way, today is Monday, so I made sure to wear my red shirt. It is Red Shirt Monday. So
It absolutely is red.
yeah, I'm wearing my red shirt today. So we've got systemic racism. Then we've got DOJ versus Chief Ignacio, who will assure you that there's nothing wrong here. Lacia Casil versus Vista Del Mar. Tall Tales versus Separatists. Who versus Fauci?
You tell me.
Who?
Yes, I don't know.
First base. And then Turley versus Tribe, my old friend Turley, and the left versus the Constitution. Okay, so you'll recall Paul Zerzan and systemic racism. Systemic racism. Now you see the word orange there. What color is it?
That would be red.
Yeah, and you see the word red. It's hard to manipulate this thing around. And what color is the word red?
The word red is orange.
Yeah, so the words stand for the narrative, and the actual color of the letters are the facts. So when you say that number one here is orange, is red. Wait, I'm confusing myself here. The narrative says that it's orange when it's really red. And the narrative here says that it's red when it's really orange. So that's how it works. Now, thinking it over a little bit, I'm not a physicist, but I'm fascinated by such things as Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. If you happen to watch Breaking Bad, you'll know who Heisenberg is or was, right? And Schrodinger's cat. Someday we'll spend a little time on Schrodinger's cat, which is both dead and alive at the same time.
In a box.
In a box. And whether or not Schrodinger's cat goes on to live happily ever after depends on the observation. So that's the theory of quantum mechanics, that you cannot observe something without affecting its nature. So perhaps those folks who were looking at rice, here's a picture of it, were looking at rice that looked like this and said it was red, were kind of like Schrodinger and his cat, that the rice was both red and orange. And you wouldn't be able to determine the actual color of the rice until someone observed it. Well, I just thought I'd throw that out there. Next, we've got the Department of Justice versus Chief Ignacio. And once again, Chief Ignacio shows us that he really knows how to turn a phrase. And I don't have yes, I do have them here. Let's take a short break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, so we're back to Chief Steve Ignacio of the Guam Police Department and his magic way with words. The guy is a real wordsmith. He'll recall the Jerry Kitchen incident, which the real Joe Cruz also named Jeep Throat, when a Jeep that was attempting to make a turn from Marine Corps Drive onto Hospital Road was going so fast that it went through the intersection, over the median, over the curb, across the parking lot, and through the front window of a restaurant called Jerry Kitchen. I guess the folks were really hungry. And then the later report showed that the driver tried to back up and drive away but couldn't because the car was so mangled. And a later investigation showed that the driver had been at the venue and was so inebriated that she could barely remain upright. She had to lean to stand upright, and on and on and on. And a police officer was one of the passengers in the car. And the more you know about it, the better it sounds. It's a great story.
Couldn't have been written any better.
And Chief Ignacio distinguished himself after he had decided that nothing was wrong by saying, I have no information, even from the get-go, that there was a cover-up in this crash. Yeah, no information. All coincidences. And he knew that from the get-go, so he indicted himself. So if an incident, let's attach numbers here. Let's say that the frames of an incident are numbered from 1 to 100. The incident occurs at 1. Obviously, there's not going to be a cover-up at 1 because there's nothing to cover up until the folks who were involved in the incident start thinking about it. So probably the cover-up isn't going to start, the seeds of the cover-up are not going to be planted till 4 or 5. And the cover-up probably isn't really in place till about 10. But at 1, at the beginning, there can be no cover-up because no one quite understands what there is to cover up. Steve said, I have no information, even from the get-go, that there was a cover-up in this crash. So if he was there at the get-go and knew that, the only logical conclusion is that he was part of the cover-up. All right, so he's at it again. $400,000 from seized assets in limbo, GPD says. About $500,000 collected from seized assets has been tied up for the Guam Police Department since the U.S. Department of Justice audited the agency before the Wuhan virus pandemic. That would have been before March of 2020. Here's a direct quote from the chief. "Nothing wrong is going on." That certainly gives us a lot of comfort, doesn't it? Nothing wrong is going on. Why would you say that, Steve? Nothing wrong is going on. What happened in January 2019, we were informed by the Federal Asset Forfeiture Administration Program that they were going to do a compliance review. It's the first time the feds decided to place their involvement in the program under scrutiny, Ignacio said. The funds from the program come from items seized by police involved in federal investigations. When we are involved in these federal cases, most of the time drug investigation cases, and assets are seized, whether it's cash or cars or other things that can be liquidated and auctioned off, and the cash proceeds come back to the federal government because of the level of participation that we have, we are able to get some of the seized assets. In order for us to participate, we have to agree to certain terms that we use the money to support our officers, to support our efforts and investigations in their drug trafficking organizations. According to the Department of Justice, the program uses asset forfeiture as a tool to deter, disrupt, and dismantle criminal enterprises by depriving criminals of their instruments of illicit activity. Ignacio said the pandemic led to multiple delays in getting the audit completed. Unfortunately, all things COVID, we had to gather all the documents. We went through 2 people on the federal side. Then more documents were requested. Some of the documents we had, some were in possession of the Department of Administration Accounting Division. So there was a lot of back and forth in making sure we provided all the documents. COVID hit in 2020, so there's lots of teleworking going on and sporadic emails back and forth. In July, GPD got word that all the required documents had been submitted. We've been waiting for their review, Ignacio said. In order to receive federal asset forfeiture proceeds, you have to have what's called a certification in place. Year to year, the certification is just given. Because there is a review in place, we did not receive our certification from the Department of Justice. We did not receive our certification from the Department of Justice. Back to the beginning. Nothing wrong is going on, said Chief of Police. That's nothing wrong. So all the assets we tagged, where we say we want this money or this car, it's my understanding that we have a little more than 400,000 and a few vehicles that are on hold. Ignacio said no time frame has been given when the federal government will complete the audit. However, he's confident GPD will get the funds. We've actually used this money in the past to buy additional cars and equipment that supports investigations and training for our officers. He said, nothing is lost. I've been assured that if it's a tag to be received by GPD under the asset forfeiture agreement, is held until we are done with our audit. Well, I guess I could have just stopped reading when I got the quote from Steve Ignacio. Nothing wrong is going on. Okay, next we have Wasia Casil versus Vista Del Mar. And this particular item on the card, I think, is a good forum to discuss some of the important issues on the island. We've got environmental protection, and then we have commercial survival. Reports from regulatory agencies within the government of Guam show a number of concerns and incomplete analysis of potential massive development near Two Lovers Point. Vista Del Mar is seeking approval from the Guam Land Use Commission to build a 796-room hotel facility, a water park, 288 condominiums, and a 59-home subdivision in what's been designated as the Dos Amantes planning area. The strategic plan adopted years ago by GLUC envisions extending tourism north of Tumon, utilizing the currently unused beaches and land between Tumon Bay and another established visitor hotspot, Two Lovers Point. They did this years ago. As part of the government's approval process, a number of agencies must weigh in on the potential impacts of the project. The Post obtained copies of these regulatory reports from Save Southern Guam, which opposes the development. You know, this reminds me of one time when there was some special money available to communities that were on the Great Lakes, 5 Great Lakes, Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario. And some folks in New York State wanted to get a hold of it, so they got somebody to introduce a bill in Congress to name Lake Champlain as one of the Great Lakes.
That's like a pond.
Well, there's money involved. So here we have Vista Del Mar trying to build on Tumon Beach, and who's objecting? Save Southern Guam. Tumon Beach didn't used to be Southern Guam, but like Lake Champlain becoming one of the Great Lakes, all of a sudden it is Southern Guam nowadays, right? We have a lot of concerns, said Lacia Casil, the executive director of the Hagadnia Restoration and Development Authority. Now, why is the Hagadnia Restoration and Development Authority getting involved in what's going on in Tumon? The executive director of that authority. Well, here's the explanation. Who spoke to the Post as a private citizen and chairperson of Save Southern Guam. I've seen this movie before.
How?
How can that work, right? How can that possibly be? It's kind of like Angel Sablon, going and testifying in favor of the mayor of Jonia as a private citizen.
Pay no attention to my career behind the curtain.
Exactly, yeah. So pay no attention to the fact that I'm kind of in the development regulation business myself, Lacia Casil said, as she sidled up to the microphone. The shoreline, environment, infrastructure, altering an iconic image of Guam's sightline, housing, there's many reasons, she said. The Department of Agriculture registered its opposition to one component of the developer's application, a variance to build 26 stories towers, which is double the 13-story limit afforded normally. Mariana fruit bats have been observed using the project as a corridor to foraging grounds and roosting sites, according to the department, which noted that as a consequence of a nearby upcoming Marine Corps base, the bats have shifted their presence toward the development site. Well, if that's the position of the Department of Agriculture, they almost ensured the extension of the Mariana's fruit bat.
Thinking the same thing.
Yeah, because everybody on the island who wants fruit bat, and I didn't know there were any more left, but of course, there's a great desire for them, and now that people know where they are, this environmental hazard will soon be eliminated thanks to the openness of the Department of Agriculture. The proposed Vista Del Mar development, as presented, fails to address conservation measures to minimize or avoid impacts to the endangered species, the department wrote, removing food supply and encroaching their corridor will alter the fruit bat's behavior, which is a violation of the Endangered Species Act. I guess we could say that the Department of Agriculture is going to bat for the Fanihi. Other agencies, while not explicitly opposing the development, noted concerns with potential impacts it can bring or challenges it may face. Quote, unlike the properties in Tumum Bay, the subject lot is approximately a little over 300 feet from the reef crest, BOSAP stated. Now, it's amazing that an agency like the Bureau of Statistics and Plans can speak. BOSAP. This area is known to have seasonal high wave inundation of up to 13 feet and strong currents which can make for dangerous recreational water uses during the wintertime. The western shoreline is also vulnerable to high surf as a result of typhoons. Waves recorded in this area reached 24 feet when Typhoon Mangkhut passed north of Guam on September 10, 2018. So they're talking about the west side of the island. So we ought to shut down Ganya Bay, Tumon Beach, etc. I would think the same thinking applies there as applies to the site they're talking about. Water supply also could be an issue with the current infrastructure in place. According to Walter Languerro, administrator of the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, the nearest production well is not enough to meet the average water needs outlined by project documents. The developers must consult with Guam Waterworks Authority to ensure Vista Del Mar doesn't adversely affect the water supply for existing customers in the area. I just have a feeling that the last thing that people who build a hotel want to do is not have enough water. Air quality is another concern from neighboring water and power utility assets. Guam EPA notes that portions of the development may intercept the exhaust plume from the new proposed power plant located nearby. Now listen to this again. Guam EPA notes that portions of the development may intercept the exhaust plume from the new proposed power plant located nearby. There is a book called Bureaucratese that everyone who speaks to the press must study. There will be exhaust stacks that will likely emit plumes of air pollutants that will impact portions of the development under certain atmospheric conditions. In other words, sometimes the smoke may blow down that way.
Sounds like it already started.
Yeah. This is from Walter Leon Guerrero, who added, the applicant is advised the Northern District Wastewater Treatment Plant is located nearby the proposed development and may result in the detection of unpleasant owners by residents, guests, and employees on a potentially frequent basis. Boy, this guy, Walter, we ought to hook him up with Chief Ignacio. The two would make a dynamic pair, wouldn't they? The developer's environmental impact study touted planned improvements to these plants as ways to significantly reduce plant odors and greatly improve emission characteristics that affect neighboring projects. Other agencies said they had no objection to the project as long as outlined conditions are met. Department of Public Works Director of Public Works, Vince Areola, recommended approval of the project, but listed a number of requirements for stormwater disposal, streetlight installations, access roads, and parking lots. Guam Power Authority General Manager John Benavente also had no objections, but disclosed that there hasn't been a study completed on how the new hotel, condominiums, gated communities, and other amenities would impact the island's power supply. A system impact assessment will be required to determine the effect of this development on GPA's existing power facilities, Benavente wrote. Maget Bordadzu, general manager of the Guam Waterworks Authority, registered the utility's conditional support for the proposal. GWA requires the applicant to coordinate with GWA Engineering Department at least 6 months prior to the building permit application submittal. Discussion shall include the proposed water demand and sewer production calculations in order to determine if existing GWA facilities can accommodate the proposed development and if any off-site infrastructure improvements may be necessary. Now, there's another really important part of this story, and it goes back to something I've been harping on since about the 4th of July. But stopping right here. So on the one hand, we've got investors who come in and want to dump millions and millions of dollars into our economy and build what looks like a first-class tourist destination at a time when our tourist industry is really not thriving. In fact, it's almost dead. It's on life support. And if that resort were built, you know, one of the things that some of the folks in the tourist industry have said, it would be better for the island if we could ratchet up our accommodations and our visitor opportunities so that instead of talking about Japan, instead of attracting salarymen and office ladies, we're attracting folks with big bucks to spend. That way we could keep working with the same size plant, rake in more taxes, pay higher wages, et cetera, et cetera. So this looks like the kind of development that would do exactly that. Now, if that's the case, but this new development called Vista Del Mar creates serious environmental problems, then it's probably not worth it. One of the things that causes my opinion to be formed is the fact that the executive director of the Hagatna Restoration and Development Authority is against the development. That's enough for me right there. Call me a contrarian, if you will. Yeah. Now, these other agencies, it's their job. The EPA has a job to do, and one would expect EPA, if they're going to err, they're going to err on the side of being overcautious. I'm not going to quibble with that. We have a Territorial Land Use Commission, and this is going to be a tough decision for them because obviously there are big bucks involved here. And I want to see the big bucks come rolling into the island. One of the key points that this article makes is that the Land Use Commission long ago approved a plan that would allow the tourist area to extend from the end of Tumon Beach, from Gun Beach, down to Two Lovers Point. That's at the beginning of this article. Let's see here. The strategic plan adopted years ago by GLUC envisions extending tourist development north of Tumon, utilizing the currently unused beaches and land between Tumon Bay and another established visitor hotspot, Two Lovers Point. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a short break here before we go to the big halftime show.
Try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagatna and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagatna location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The holidays are here and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
The Sting, a great movie. The Entertainer, a great song. So, I'm going to reserve decision on this. I haven't decided whether I want the Territorial Land Use Commission to go forward in spite of the reports, or I want the Territorial Land Commission to say no. Maybe the best possible resolution here would be to see if the developer is able to continue on and meet some of the requirements that have been forwarded there. Now, I don't get really excited about this argument. It will ruin our pristine beaches. You know, when no one paid any attention to those beaches forever and ever and ever, and now someone wants to do something with it, it's kind of like, how do you know what land was sacred to the ancient Chamorros? It's where the military wants to build. Yeah. The land only becomes pristine and precious when somebody wants to build on it. Okay, now the real punchline here in this story, and one that, that I've been hammering away on for a long time, goes like this. It's at the end of the story. A planned hearing of the GLUC Hybrid Commission, in other words, to deal with these matters, was canceled after officials felt a required resolution from the Tatuha Municipal Planning Council was passed during an improperly noticed meeting. What is it going to take? This is throwing sand in the wheels here, because the Tumon Harmon, also known as Tatua, or Tatuha, I don't know which is where to put my emphasis here, can't publish an agenda that tells people what's going on.
They had to go back inside and put their pants on.
Yeah, exactly. Mayor Luis Rivera confirmed for the Post that the council is expected to take up the matter again in its next monthly meeting scheduled in January. I'm going to be watching the papers like a hawk for the notice of that meeting. And of course, it comes back to you, Mayor Luis Rivera. You're the paid government employee there, not your planning council. So if you're a government official and you don't know about Public Law 86 as you were 36-34, you better get it out.
Talk to the AG's office.
Talk to the AG's office. Sign up for their educational program, whatever. Okay, we got just a couple of seconds here before the big halftime show. I've got the next item on the card is Tall Tales versus Separatists, but I don't want to start it. I'll just take a peek at what we got on Facebook here. First post on Facebook, Bob Klitzkie, Red Shirt Monday. And then I've got, let's see, Rico is there. And Rico twice. Pam Duvall, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Sandra Regis. Rico, let's go, Brandon. Okay, let's go to the halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The unfriendly skies. I'm Chris DeMeo, Fox News. It was a chaotic holiday weekend for travelers at some of the nation's busiest airports.
Globally, airlines canceling more than 2,700 flights. More than a third of those cancellations coming from flights within, leaving, or coming to the U.S. Thousands of frustrated travelers caught up in the wave of cancellations left stranded across the country, including a woman who says she was forced to spend Christmas Eve with her two sons inside of an Atlanta hotel because her flight was dropped. Delta and United Airlines are blaming Omicron-related staffing shortages and bad weather in parts of the country for the cancellations. The two lead U.S. carriers with more than 800 flights dropped collectively between today and Christmas. The airlines are apologizing and promising to rebook stranded passengers.
That's Fox's Charles Watson. Despite reportedly pulling some troops back, Russia has tens of thousands stationed near the Ukrainian border. Could an attack come next?
For a month, over 150,000 Russian troops have been running drills near the Ukrainian border. It signaled to U.S. intelligence officials that Russia was gearing up for an attack. President Vladimir Putin has denied this. Following a talk with President Biden earlier this month, Putin said that he is weighing his options if the U.S. does not give in to demands of security guarantees alongside a commitment to halt NATO's expansion into Eastern Europe.
Fox's Alexandria Hoff. Add another Republican to the long list of those opposing President Biden's Build Back Better spending bill. Missouri Congressman Roy Blunt says the measure is too expensive and will only fuel inflation.
Putting more money into the economy at a time when the economy is already overheated, I think is just a bad idea.
Blunt appearing on Fox News Sunday. Despite inflation, holiday sales rose at the fastest pace in 17 years. America is listening to Fox News.
Howdy, Chili's is serving y'all some Texas-sized family meal, because everything's bigger in Texas. Enjoy full racks of Chili's world-famous baby back ribs, margarita chicken, savory shrimp, beef fajita, smoked jalapeno sausages, mashed potatoes, and corn on the cob. Man, this meal's bigger than Bill's, but it ain't breaking the bank. Chili's has Texas-sized family meals for just $45 to feed your crew of 3 to 6 folks. For your youngins, just add $5 for a kid's meal. Chili's, more life and bigger meals happen here.
Afre, my name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only support programs at the university, but also helps students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
The New York Fire Department is dealing with severe staff shortages due to the Omicron strand of COVID.
As COVID-19 cases surge and the Omicron variant is now the dominant strain in New York City, the FDNY is dealing with an EMS shortage during the holidays. The FDNY confirming that 19% of the city's EMS workers are out sick. The average is about 5%. The FDNY says the increase are numbers they haven't seen before. On top of staffing shortages, union leaders say they're also seeing a high volume in emergency calls related to COVID-19. All of these factors leading to overtime and burnout. The FDNY says crews can work up to 18-hour shifts at their discretion, and personal leave and most training classes have been canceled to make additional staff available.
Fox 5 New York's Lisette Nunez. Peter Parker's good fortune continued over the holiday weekend, despite some formidable competition from the new Matrix and Sing movies.
Spider-Man No Way Home hanging on to the #1 spot, adding almost $82 million over the 3-day weekend for a total North American theater gross of $467 million.
We started getting some visitors.
In second place, Sing 2 adds almost $24 million, with The Matrix Resurrections taking third place, grossing $12 million. The animated musical Sing 2 features high-profile celebrity talent, including Matthew McConaughey, Scarlett Johansson, Reese Witherspoon, and Bono, and includes a jukebox soundtrack full of well-known hits. The fourth Matrix stars Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss. Ann Carrick, Fox News.
The Texas lawyer who successfully argued the landmark abortion rights case Roe v. Wade before the Supreme Court has died. Sarah Weddington was 76, her cause of death not immediately known. A major snowstorm dumping snow and whiteout conditions in the mountains of Northern California and Nevada. Forecasters warning travel could be very difficult for several days. I'm Chris DeMeo. This is Fox News.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The holidays are here and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. Zero down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
So here we are. Next item on the card is Tall Tales versus Separatists. And the focal point here is an insert that was inserted in the Daily News a couple Fridays ago that looks like this. And it's from it says at the beginning on the second page, paid for by the Commission on Decolonization, etc. Well, we don't really have a commission on decolonization, and that's why I've been spending so much time on this insert, trying to set the record straight, trying to help people overcome all of the gaslighting that comes from an outfit called the Commission, that calls itself the Commission on Decolonization. But the actual name of that commission is established by Chapter 21 of Title I of the Guam Code, and this was enacted by Public Law 23-147, Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. So this is not about decolonization. It's not for, if you're not Chamorro, it's not for you. It's about Chamorro self-determination, which sort of at the edges touches decolonization, but it's not the part and parcel of decolonization. Now, I've gone through some of this stuff before, but I'll try to bring you up to date before I go into some new matter. Public Law 23-147 was a Hope Cristobal project. Hope was a one-term senator, and this was enacted when she was a lame duck, after she had lost election and was very near the end of her senatorial term. And the idea is that The idea is that decolonization can only be accomplished by allowing Chamorros to vote for amongst 3 different choices of political status: statehood, independence, or free association. I've spent a fair amount of time explaining why statehood is a practical impossibility and free association is a legal impossibility. So this is a very clever, I don't know if Hope is this clever or someone helped her out with this, but it's a very clever way to channel your thought process to only one result, which is independence, which is practically and legally possible. And Congress could pass a law when signed by the president or over the president's veto that said something along the lines of the United States shall withdraw sovereignty over the island of Guam effective July 1, 2022. And Guam would be independent. That's all it would take. Congress has the ability to do that. Congress did it in the past. The Philippines were an American colony from 1898 to July 4, 1946, when they became an independent country, pursuant to an act of Congress called the Tidings-McDuffie Act. So independence is a real possibility. And my thesis is that all of the emanations from the so-called Decolonization Commission, which is really, as I keep saying, the Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination, all of the emanations from that commission are meant to channel you towards one choice: independence. So this 20-page insert is pretty well done in respect to that. It holds out, the brass ring. If you ride the independence, if you ride the self-determination merry-go-round, you'll soon recognize the brass ring is called sovereignty. That sovereignty, no matter what, sovereignty is worth whatever endeavors or sacrifices have to be made so that the island of Guam, the people of Guam, Chamorros, all the people of Guam, everybody but Tall Tales, everybody but Tail Kid, anyhow, have political sovereignty. That's the great prize. And the great evil that must be avoided in the pursuit of sovereignty is called colonialism. So it really comes down to this: colonialism, always bad; sovereignty, always good. And if you're not on board with the sovereignty quest, then you just don't really understand what the issues are. I've made the argument that the first thing we ought to do is find out if anybody on this island wants to break ties with the United States. Anybody but a hardcore group of very vocal separatists. Other than that, is there anyone that wants to break on this island, wants to break ties with the United States? And my own anecdotal evidence is not only no, but hell no. That the overwhelming sentiment is that our situation is really a pretty good one, and not one that we would like to junk and for a pig in the poke and take a gamble on an independent Guam. There's a lot of rhetoric in that direction, and I started out with this first page of this insert. Now the fiction that the Commission on Self-Determination, as you were the Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination, this commission favors no result. They just want Chamorros to be able to make that choice amongst those 3 alternatives. And so I pose a theoretical question. Suppose we had a vote, and it's legally possible to do that. Congress could pass a law saying that the 15th Amendment doesn't apply to Guam, or better, a tailored piece of legislation that said a plebiscite can be conducted on the island of Guam to determine the wishes of the Chamorro people as to what political status they would like. Or, excuse me, not what political status they would like if it were to go the way I think it should, whether or not the Chamorro people want to separate from the United States, yes or no. And if the answer is no, then that's the end of it. That's the end of Melvin Wanpat's cushy job, the papier-mâché Commission on Self-Determination, as you were Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination, $1 million item in our budget, etc. So if that were the case, that would be the end of the story. Now, I anticipate that the separatists would say, but that wouldn't be decolonization. Therefore, it's not possible. So my question would be, let's speak hypothetically again, if 90% of the Chamorro people said, no, we don't want to be independent, we want to continue our political relationship with the United States, that would not be possible. The people would have to have self-determination, whether they wanted it or not, all in the name of freedom and inalienable rights and all of the other fancy rhetoric that the separatists throw around. So on the first sentence of this insert, we have these words. Resolving Guam's political status is important work. And of course, this commission that put this out is not interested in Guam's political status. They're interested in implementation and exercise of Chamorro self-determination. The first page is you know, it took me almost a whole show to get through the first page because it's so full of loaded words. Things like, as long as Guam remains an unincorporated territory, our people will never be treated equally. So our people is who? Does that mean everyone who lives on the island? Chamorros? And will never be treated equally by whom? Each other? You know, it is an emotional appeal, which most of the stuff in this insert is an emotional appeal. I went on from there to the article on sovereignty, and the last sentence the end of the article says, this lack of sovereignty makes Guam powerless to federal decisions and prevents it from engaging in foreign affairs. This implies that Guam is subject to the authority of higher or outside powers that can make decisions that are not in the best interest of the island. Well, statehood is off the table, but if Guam were a state, the same thing would hold true.
No way.
And then I went on from there to what is colonization? And the bullet points here, the subjection of peoples to alien subjugation, domination, and exploitation constitutes a denial of fundamental human rights. Now, whenever I hear the phrase human rights, you know, my credulity stops. Because human rights is a fancy phrase that people on the hard left use as a means to take control of a situation, to regulate behavior, and to redistribute incomes. If you want to know what rights look like, take a look at the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution. There's nothing in the United States Constitution that says everyone has a right to medical care. They're negative rights. They're telling you what you can do or should do. They're telling you what the government can't do to you. And, you know, for me, on this whole self-determination, independence, separatist thing, there's a high degree of self-interest here because if Guam became an independent and became a Chamocracy, a government of Chamorros, for Chamorros, by Chamorros, I don't think my life would be very pleasant. Not because I don't have a certain affection for Chamorros as a group or some Chamorros as individuals, not because of that, but because this separatist group that purports to speak for the Chamorros, to be the voice of Chamorros, which, by the way, I'm perfectly willing to recognize. I think Hope Cristobal is the voice of the Chamorros. And by the way, it's Monday, Jose, so I got to play that at the end of
We're queued up.
my piece here. Yeah, Hope Cristobal certainly is the voice of Chamorros. So the first thing that the separatists did before the horse is even out of the starting gate is restrict who can vote on an important question. So if they have if their mindset is, well, we can't let anybody that's not Chamorro vote, then what does the future hold for you if you are not Chamorro? You know, talk about a fundamental human right. It's not. But if there were such a thing, it would be. So I want to go from that to and then I spent some time on who are the colonized. And no, wait a minute, I didn't get to who are the colonized. I'm going to come back to that because today I want to talk about why should the native inhabitants of Guam decolonize? Why should the native inhabitants? This is a euphemism that translates into Chamorro. The native inhabitants of Guam have been under colonial rule for approximately 500 years. Each colonizer brought parts of their culture and traditions that have become part of the local landscape. Although these changes have shaped what Guam is today, colonization is colonization. Now, there's a statement you can't argue with, right? Colonization is colonization. The United States has colonized Guam, and the people of Guam are colonized. Okay, I'll sign up for that. No need to beat that one any harder. Under the American flag, it is easy to see how the people of Guam see their current political relationship with the United States as one of freedom. But a colonial relationship is not an equal relationship, and without equality, there can be no freedom. So in other words, if Guam is not, because of colonization, there's no equality, then we're not free. Very interesting. That's what I mean when I say this whole piece is to channel your thought process down to the point where you say, yeah,
there's a huge speed bump that I can't get over where the rest of it is moot for me. It says here the people of Guam are colonized. Then they list what colonized means. But I know many people from Guam who are living in the United States who you can't distinguish differently from any other citizen in the United States from their denied rights, because there are no rights that are being denied.
Exactly.
Again, who is colonized is not a person. It's just an island of Guam. And I know that that's a separate argument, but the way that they're framing the argument here, the people of Guam are not colonized in the sense that we're restricted because of our status as people of Guam. This is very difficult to get over and understand the rest of this argument if you keep saying that we're colonized and we have no rights like any other citizen in the United States.
And that, of course, has been a recurring theme, a second-class citizen, you know, that whole rap. So the whole idea here is to channel your thought process towards independence. And I've described it as it's like you're going from point A to point B, and along the way there are 1,000 gates. And each gate doesn't open very wide, and it doesn't seem like it leads you to anything grossly different than on the others. But as you go through gate after gate after gate, you wind up at a destination that you hadn't planned on going to at all. And this is just one example of these gates, these thought process gates. Colonization is colonization. And here we go. Although these changes have shaped Guam, what Guam is today, colonization is colonization. And the United States has colonized Guam, and the people of Guam are colonized. Under the American flag, it's easy to see how the people of Guam see their current political relationship with the United States as one of freedom. But a colonial relationship is not an equal relationship, and without equality, there can be no freedom. Yeah, so equality means independence. When a people are under the control of a colonizer, it means that someone else somewhere else is making decisions for them. The colonizer is writing their laws, providing their education, giving them financial aid, and using their land. The colonized people live within a world shaped by the decision of the colonizer. They are not doing any of these things for themselves. So it's not talking about statehood, because things wouldn't be any different under statehood than they are right now. You wouldn't even know that Guam had become a state except in November of even-numbered years. Other than that, right now, I think some people are amazed to find out that Guam is a colony, because they think it's just like the rest of the U.S. It also means that the colonizer can dictate what the colonized do and how they do it. And that happens, right? True freedom comes from self-development and the ability for people to choose how to develop without interference from another, like the national government if we were a state.
Sounds very libertarian.
Yeah. When the United States Congress passed the Organic Act, they gave the people of Guam limited self-government. Congress transferred control from the naval administration to the local government, but they did not free the people from colonial rule. Rather, they constrained the island with the territorial clause and its plenary powers. Decolonization will allow the people of Guam to be free from colonization and be the master of their own destiny. Decolonization will allow the people of Guam to realize political sovereignty and decide for themselves how to structure their government. Obviously, independence. You don't get to do that if you're a state. How to educate their children, how to create sustainable economic industries, and how to use their land and resources.
Didn't Biden just close a pipeline, destroying a whole bunch of private companies' freedom of choice?
Yeah. Well, I made the point before that, if Guam were a state, people would be listening to this show and hear me kvetching all the time about how we don't have a federal government anymore. We have a national government because the national government has taken over so much of the function of what should be state powers. And the same would be true of the state of Guam. So if you read this carefully and you dwell on each clause in each sentence, it can only mean one thing: independence. And that's why I say this whole self-determination thing is just a smokescreen for independence. Decolonization would also force the United States to fulfill the obligation that they have as an administering power of its non-self-governing territory. Decolonization would allow Guam to enter the world stage either one, an integrated state with the United States, which is not possible, a freely associated state with the United States, which can't be done.
Without independence.
Unless you're independent, or a freely associated state within the United States. A freely associated states within the United States? Now that's novel. Or 3, an independent sovereign state, thus removing Guam from the list of non-self-governing territories. So the whole paragraph is designed to direct you to the conclusion that, yeah, sovereignty, colonialization, freedom.
They define the people who make the decision are the people of Guam. Does that include all those living in the States?
No.
They're the people of Guam. So then that means it includes you, because you're a people of Guam now.
Well, and that's why I say I'm motivated somewhat by self-interest, because the separatists, when they came down, the first thing they wanted to do, the first really important question was they say, I can't vote. So that is not the way to win the support of someone, to say that, you know, what your government holds so dear, a democratic government, is voting, and then to say you can't vote.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Who is it that's the subject of the injustice?
The Chamorro people.
Which would include those living in the States.
That's right. Yeah.
So what happens to all those living in the States if
Guam is declared? I think they would probably have a free right. They could come back to Guam without any permits or visas or anything. Oh, wait a minute. They can do that now.
Exactly.
They might not be able to. If Guam were independent, maybe they couldn't.
Maybe. They have to prove who they are. I don't know. This is just not, this is confusing. It really is.
And it's meant to be confusing. It's meant to be confusing, and it's meant to throw out independence, sovereignty, freedom, the buzzwords, in such a manner as to channel your thoughts towards that one particular result.
I get the anger with the past. A lot of people can't get over the past, you know. And it's not to dismiss history, but sometimes we have to use the language of these days and the understanding and not to, I don't want to lecture, but again, this paragraph alone is not even defining who it is that's being who's receiving the injustice. Yeah. So I don't know who we're talking about.
And of course, their rap is it's always been the Chamorros for 500 years. You know, every country in the world, as part of every sovereign nation in the world, as part of their national plan or constitution or will or whatever, had this item. Let's figure out some way where we can go to Guam and really crap on the Chamorro people.
And I can see people say, Jose, you know, you weren't born here, although you're a Chamorro, and you weren't raised here, even though I came back to live here. So that would that automatically dismiss me from being a Chamorro?
Chamorro, Hagunay Chamorro, Chamorro Pawaso.
And so that would mean if I am Chamorro by their classification or definition, and I lived in the States, and I didn't experience what they're feeling to experience, then that kind of kills the argument that there's an injustice happening.
It kind of does. But, of course, it's not about argument.
It's about feeling.
It's about feelings, and it's about persuasion, which is a part of argument, but not the whole thing. Let's go to Churchill Downs, Wrigley Field, and then afterwards we'll listen to the voice of the separatist movement.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
Okay, so here we are, Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois, world's most beautiful ballpark, and apparently there is a conclave of separatists meeting right out in the middle of the infield at Wrigley Field, and the key speaker is Hope Cristobal, who is the author of Public Law 23-147, which created the Commission for Decolonization, I got to read it again, for the implementation and exercise of Chamorro self-determination. So here's the author of that piece of legislation.
Colonizer! You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization is the same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are. Get off my island.
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest or what to protest for. You need to go. You need to go. I'm against this. That's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to yell.
I'm an indigenous Chamorro. I have more rights here than you are. You came here because of the structures of colonialism, asshole. Tayo mamalaw how sige Jordan Tano. Itaw tano how. Waho bini taw tano. Waho bini magahoda. Waho son na dai gizu bini. Hago taza na son mo bini. You need to leave.
You need to go.
Please.
You need to get out of here.
Please pause this.
Get out of here.
Please, this is not your place.
When I get a chance, go.
Please. Thank you. Thank you, partner. Please leave. No, you didn't want to.
What happened to him?
Well, he confronted me.
What did he
He's
say?
telling me I shouldn't be here. I support Black Lives Matter. It's part of the colonialistic systemic racism. And I came here to support these people. He's a white man that has come here. And he continues the legacy of colonialism. He continues to fight people, individuals, my goodness. I'm a former senator. I authored the Commission on Decolonization.
We are proud of you, Auntie.
So just Malasi.
He's sick.
Well, there you are, the voice of the separatist movement on Guam. Very proud of authoring Public Law 23-147, which is, as I keep reminding you, the Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. Tano ipalawan ay dan ti apaka lo apaka si Paul Zerzan pues no Bobby Tauto sa apaka. It's very, very clear if you listen to Hope where this, if she speaks for the separatist movement, where it's going. And I haven't heard anybody else come out. I haven't heard somebody come out and say, you know, she really doesn't speak for anybody but herself. A couple of the young folks there, you need to leave. You need to leave.
She spoke and they repeated.
Yeah. Yeah.
He even had no idea what he was saying. They just heard her say, you need to leave, and they all started repeating and chanting and on the microphone as well. It's just really uneasy and uncomfortable.
It really is. And you heard, you haven't heard a single so-called responsible voice in the separatist movement come forward and say, well, you know, that's not how we feel, or that's not how I feel. You know, the silence is perhaps as communicative as Hope was when she went on her little rant there. All right, before I go into the next item on the card, I've got our Carl of all people. Good afternoon, Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. Yeah, very interesting show as usual. I just wanted to chime in that one of the things that bothers me the most about this whole political status decolonization issue is that the people who are against it, which is the vast majority of people on Guam, are lulled into a kind of thinking that this could never happen. You know, it's impossible. I mean, it's a relatively small group in relation to the whole population of Guam. But what people don't factor in many times is that the older generation, my mom's generation, there was 10 siblings in her family during the war and the occupation years. There's only one left alive, and my 93-year-old auntie. And the generation following that still had some patriotism, some loyalty, some appreciation, and I count myself among that. You know, I greatly value the fact that the soldiers who gave their lives in recapturing Guam gave me 50 years with my mom before she passed. But that generation is dying off. And the younger generations after that are being indoctrinated in our schools. One of the number one selling, maybe the number one selling textbooks in America is A People's History of America by Howard Zinn, who is a Marxist. And there's another one I think it's called The American Pageant, I think it is, that's been through 17 editions, and it paints that picture of, a deeply, badly flawed America and how oppressive it has been. So these students are being indoctrinated with this. Teachers are being indoctrinated, and in the humanities and the social sciences on Guam and in the States, they're graduating and going into education and the media and, all these other culture production institutions. So the culture is changing. So people who think this could never happen, you're fooling yourself. Yourselves. It is incrementally happening right now. And unless there is a counter reaction to that, it is. I look on it as a possible eventuality. But that's the thing that bothers me is just this this idea of it could never happen. All it takes is I was reading something in a Thomas Sowell book recently, and he talked about some areas of the world where the people, cultures, and ethnicities within a location were living completely at peace. And I believe one of them was, the example he gave was Sri Lanka, in which there was a minority and a majority ethnic group, and they lived in perfect peace. And then a politician came into the scene who was a skilled demagogue, and he took advantage of the situation and inflamed the hatred until they were basically at civil war, killing each other, massacring each other. And these were people that got along just perfectly well. So all we're looking for is for the perfect leverage point, and I think people on the left are waiting for that on Guam, just like George Floyd was a leverage point that they took advantage of. They're waiting for that point very patiently. And all it takes is someone like that, the right demagogue and the right leverage point, and we are off to the races. And when you look at their strategy, it's really quite clever because they have tried to eliminate as much as possible the only other viable option to separation from America, and that is keeping our present status and building on the foundation that has gotten us this far to a remarkable state of development and security, and then focusing on pumping out agitprop or agitation propaganda, speeches, articles, opinion pieces, commentary of all kind, framing the United States as this horrible, horrible place, and pumping out revisionist history. So anyway, that's my concern, is that I just see this passive acceptance and thinking it couldn't happen here. It's happened many other places, many other places around the world. We are walking on a well-trod path in history that has happened many times in the 20th century, and Thomas Sowell has opened my eyes to that. But anyway, I just wanted to toss that into the mix of the conversation.
Well, our Carl, that makes it all the more important that tailgaters carry out the right message and disabuse people of the fact that apathy is not a way to deal with this.
Exactly. Yeah. The attitude of it could never happen on Guam is just so many times around the world that attitude has not ended well. Many times. All it takes is the right conditions, the right leverage point, and the right demagogue or demagogues, and we will be off to the races. And that's what happened in the States. They were waiting for that George Floyd moment. They didn't accidentally have all these foot soldiers show up, and Antifa and BLM. This was all very strategically planned, and all they were waiting for was the right moment. And the same thing is happening here. We are just not aware of it, but there are a lot of things happening under the surface that are prepping for what they foresee coming, the right opportunity. Anyway, Bob, advance Happy New Year.
Okay, Carl, thanks for calling.
All right.
Okay, our Carl takes us right up to Churchill Downs, and coming out of Churchill Downs, I'm going to sell a ticket to the merry-go-round to another Joe.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visitguam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Okay, so here we are, Churchill Downs, a couple more furlongs, and I'll be at the finish line for another episode of Tall Tales here on this beautiful Monday. And I've got one of our regular callers on the line. It's not Joe, it's another Joe. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Hey, goodbye. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you much.
So I'm not sure I understand what the motivation is for this. The translation, the bad white person, or is it the group, or is it an individual? I forget who is it she's complaining about in particular.
The group, everybody, anybody who's white is bad. As a colon, anybody who's white is here. Anybody here that is white is obviously a colonizer. That's why they're here. She's Tautautano. She has special rights over these white colonizers, and that's what she's telling us. And then that also that colonizer is synonym for murderer.
Okay, well, there's not a substantial white population in Guam, so really this seems to be a photo op moment, and opportunity for like I said, photo op. So there's. What's the motivation? Where's it going to go from here with momentum? Doesn't really make sense, because the question is who's next? who's next in the Chamorro Enough Committee, and who's going to oversee that Chamorro Enough Committee, because it's not clear, if you would treat the lesser of us, what would you, how far would you go, right? And so I think during this Christmas season, if we remember that we're Christian, I think things will work out and people stay with those core values, because communism cannot exist with Christianity. And so if everyone puts being Christian here on Guam first as one of our Chamorro identities, it'll work out. The problem is the older generation's dying off and the younger generation's, stepping up. But she's one of the older bunch, but there aren't enough people, as you say, that are voicing a little bit of opposition towards her, and it really doesn't make sense because what is it that she's saying that how are we being mistreated by the so-called white boogeyman? It doesn't make sense.
Murderers, colonizers, and I make the point from time to time that much of the appeal here, this whole separatist thing, is emotional, not logical or reasonable. She is the poster child for an emotional thought process.
Very true. Uncle Bob, I think as Robert Underwood said that Chamorros, the first documentation was in the early 1800s, and it was in the census. And to my understanding, by this time, everyone who was considered Chamorro is basically mestizo. So they're mix of Spanish, Mexican, I guess to a little bit extent Filipino.
Even those horrible people with white skins.
Yeah. And so they're a mixture. These are the offspring of everyone that was put here. And so really, like I said, who does this group suggest is going to be next in the Chamorro Enough Committee? Who's good enough for the Chamorro Enough Committee? And so if they just speak coherently and they make it clear, I think people will just right now it doesn't make sense. It doesn't really. They're not being coherent, and they're not right now. There's still enough of us who feel that we are Christian as part of our identity, and so I'm not worried yet. But we should definitely pay attention because, like I said, if you don't pay attention to history, you might unfortunately repeat it. So learn the lessons, teach it to the children, and who's she said Taimamala? Well, we should kind of be ashamed of the bad language being used, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I no, Bob. I mean, you've married into our culture, and you have children and I guess grandchildren, and you're part of for God willing, for as long as you're with us, you're part of our identity, and I'm trying to be considerate to people who are of a different mind as me. I know you don't give others the benefit of the doubt. Unfortunately, I tend to, but that's because I think it's part of being Christian. I could be wrong. So
let me set the record straight here. What that means, the benefit of the doubt means this: your facts, the facts that you state, are not very believable. I doubt your facts, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. We don't do that on Tall Tales. Tall Tales is not an emotion-oriented location. Tall Tales is for facts, reason, logic, etc. That's why I say no benefit of the doubt here in Tall Tales. I think I know. I think what you're saying is that you tend to take a charitable outlook towards other folks, and that's good.
Like Joe Friday, right? Come on, just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. So let's just say, hey, Senator, ma'am, Miss, with all due respect, just the facts. Okay. Anyway, thanks for your time, Kabab. Again, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we hope to. I'll keep listening. Thank you.
All right. Goodbye, another Joe. Yeah. So, let's give them the benefit. People gave Archbishop Apparon the benefit of the doubt for 30 years, and look at where it got us. It's just not a healthy mindset. I would prefer, in fact, I conduct myself this way. I'm skeptical. You know, I use the Missouri, the Missouri mechanism. The state motto of Missouri is "Show me." Yeah. So if what you say doesn't factually line up with the things that I know, you could perhaps convince me, but I'm not going to say, well, yeah, I'm going to agree with you, even though I don't agree with your factual foundation, because I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. No, and I'm not going to give Hope Christobel the benefit of the doubt for sure, or the separatists for that matter. Interesting ideas, another Joe. The whole idea about Christianity. Of course, Christianity was part of the colonial legacy. The reason that Spain, one of the reasons that Spain wanted colonies was that they wanted to spread the Catholic faith around the world. They weren't all that pure. They also wanted, you know, some commercial enterprise, but that's one of the reasons for Spanish colonialism. They were very successful. They planted Catholicism all over the world, including on Guam. Okay, I got about, 3 more minutes, Jose? And I wanted to, next item here is, I guess I could start this. It's called Wokeism versus the Church. Burns, and this is a story that ran in the Daily News. Burns, inclusivity is key for the Catholic Church. Yeah, that's all we need is a woke bishop.
It's like falling into the trap of the narrative.
Exactly. Yeah, and a lot of it is the kind of thing you'd expect a bishop to say. But here's one paragraph that caught my eye. In this synod, we will journey together with the purpose of being more inclusive as we look to our future church, paying special attention to those on the margins whose concerns and perspective are so often overlooked. In a very real sense, the process will not be a time for preaching by the church. Rather, it will be a time of reflection and listening. When you use the word inclusivity, you know, going back to the benefit of the doubt, you know, you stepped into a big pile, Archbishop. I suppose next week, this week was inclusivity. Next week, it'll be diversity. The following week, it'll be equity. It's just not the kind of word that you want to use, Archbishop. Inclusivity carries.
Especially with a church that is extremely inclusive by definition.
To start with, yeah. The meaning of the word Catholic, universal. It's for everyone. And the mission of the Catholic Church, churches are in the business of saving souls. The Catholic mission of the Catholic Church is saving all souls for the whole world. Yeah, and I was really disappointed when I saw Burns, inclusivity is key for the Catholic Church. Okay, that's about all I had to say about this particular article, and I did want to get that into the record here on Tall Tales. The bishop does not need to be talking about inclusivity. Okay, the end of another perfect day here on Tall Tales. Let's go, Brandon, and we'll see you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Get the shot. I'm Chris DeMeo, Fox News. Starting today, COVID vaccines are required for workers in New York City.
A new vaccine mandate goes into effect. The city says it applies to roughly 184,000 businesses. Testing, not an option. Those seeking a medical or religious exemption can continue to work while the matter is pending. Workers have 45 days to get their second shot. Some businesses say the mandate is simply too burdensome. It requires that employers keep vaccine records. Fines for violations start at $1,000. Latest data shows 91% of all adults in New York City have had at least one shot. Other cities, as you mentioned, are preparing to beef up current indoor vaccine mandates or implement new ones. They include Chicago, Boston, Washington, D.C., New Orleans, and Newark, New Jersey. While each municipality has its own requirements, some are calling for full vaccination for anyone over age 5. In some instances, proof of a negative test result is an option.
Fox's David Lee Miller. Meantime, families who've lost loved ones to COVID can apply for aid from the federal government up to $9,000 to cover funeral costs. More than 200,000 families have gotten money, but with more than 800,000 deaths due to COVID, many families have not yet taken advantage of that benefit. South African Archbishop Desmond Tutu has passed away.
Archbishop Desmond Tutu has died at age 90, though he leaves behind an accomplished and purposeful life. The Nobel Peace Prize winner was one of the driving forces of ending the apartheid system in South Africa. Tutu was known for holding interfaith religious services and fighting against racism in all forms. He was described by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa as a man of extraordinary intellect, integrity, and invincibility.
That's Fox's Trey Yingst. A major Christmas weekend storm caused whiteout conditions and closed key highways in the wake of blowing snow in the mountains of Northern California and Nevada. America is listening to Fox News.
The Fox News Podcasts Network. Stay on top of the latest news and information from Fox News. Listen and download the Fox News Hourly Update on your time. The trending stories you need anytime you want it. Listen and download now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
What are the most important issues facing